Some very interesting dynamics are happening right now to our US housing market. This is based on my own analysis of Realtorcom's latest data that was just published today, which is on August 15th. So in today's video, we're going to talk about home prices, housing inventory, the share of price reductions, and much more. Again, this is based on my own analysis of their data, and their report was posted today. And just like my previous videos, I did not even read it, but I will provide a link in the video description below. So if you guys read it, please let me know if my analysis agrees to theirs. So anyways, go to realtor.com/research/data, click on weekly inventory, and then click on that link right there. It takes you more or less to this information. Asking prices, housing inventory, new listings, days in the market, and also the number of price reductions, all compared to the previous 12-month period. And by the way, I noticed something as well. If you guys follow this weekly update I make for you guys, these two rows were actually revised slightly compared to the previous update in regards to active listing inventory and new listings. Only a slight revision though. So anyways, looking at the week of August 10th, the week ended August 10th, I should say, asking prices decreased by 0.2%. This marks the third consecutive week in which asking prices have decreased compared to 1 year earlier. In addition to that, the change in asking prices has been relatively flat ever since February, but again has decreased for the past 3 consecutive weeks. Home prices are not surging due to rising inventory levels and of course due to elevated prices as well. I expect sales to remain subdued in the near term due to seasonality, because home sales and general activity in our housing market tends to kind of wean off in the last half of the year. That is seasonality, but also due to low housing affordability, mainly due to elevated home prices. It is important to note that mortgage rates have been decreasing, but we're not seeing this like sharp pullback in home prices just yet. And that's why we have housing affordability. It's still very low levels right now. Now let's also talk about inventory levels, because last week inventory, and this is for existing houses excluding brand new homes construction, that increased by 35.5% compared to 12 months ago. Additionally, there's more homes for sale compared to last year for the past 40 consecutive weeks, going back to mid-November last year. Of course, this is good news for home buyers, giving you more options to choose from, and also it basically gives you an upper edge, because when more homes are for sale, you can have more negotiating power in order to get a better deal due to the fact that inventory has been on the rise. But like I mentioned in my previous videos though, the growth rate of inventory has been more or less stagnant for the past 3 months. The year-over-year gains of inventory have been pegged at around 35 to around 38% ever since mid-May. So my take on this is likely only from single-digit gains in the number of new listings. In other words, new supply hitting the market has basically lost momentum. And in fact, more recently, we're actually seeing decreases of new supply hitting the market or new listings, which I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Now, this is much different compared to the double-digit increases in the number of new listings that we saw to start the year. If you guys follow the channel, of course, I appreciate you. I also like to share multiple sources of data with you guys. So here's my own take on data from altisresearch.com, fantastic website if you guys want to learn about housing market trends on a national level, but also for different metros as well. So housing inventory 1 year ago was just under 493,000. And during the week ended August 9th this year, that increased to 693,000, just under that. So we have approximately 200,000 more homes for sale right now compared to 12 months ago. That's an increase of 41%. Something I've been mentioning on the channel for several weeks as well, maybe over a month, is that the gains of inventory levels has been more or less stagnant though, because it has been increasing at a rate around 38% ever since May, based on data from altisresearch.com. But as of late though, we're seeing a small increase of inventory though, because last week inventory increased by 40%. Now it's up by 41%. On top of that, about 3 weeks ago, we saw gains of around 38%. So the year-over-year increases has basically been increasing, but not increasing very much. In other words, not surging. Likely due to the fact we're not seeing new listings surging though. Likely due to the fact that we're only seeing small gains of new listings. And in fact, more recently, as I mentioned, new listings have been decreasing on a year-over-year basis for the past 2 consecutive weeks. So in other words, what this means is basically right here, inventory has basically been rising the same rate last year ever since May. So in other words, the growth rate has basically been flat, moving in line with last year's levels, even though we're still up by 41% year over year. On top of that, there's approximately 194,000 more existing houses for sale compared to the start this year. That represents a gain of 39% so far this year, based on data from Altis Research.com. Compare this to the same time frame last year, inventory barely squeaked out a gain, up by only 4%. So last year's time we were up by 4%, whereas this year we're up by a whopping 39%. So inventory levels basically moving much or rising much faster compared to last year. It's also rising faster compared to pre-COVID levels based on my own analysis of Realtorcom's latest data. So for example, housing inventory rose on average by 16% from January through July in 2017 through 2019, compared to a gain of 33% so far this year. Again, the same time frame, January through July this year. So inventory increased by only 16% looking at pre-COVID levels. Now, during that same time frame, we're up by 33%. So basically double the rate we saw prior to the pandemic. However, and this is a big however, because the growth rate so far this year is basically minuscule compared to the giant increases of inventory we saw in 2022. So back then, 2 years ago, January through July, inventory increased by a whopping 83%, whereas this year, we're seeing gains of about 33%. This is why I do not expect to see a sharp correction in home sales like we saw in 2022. And I'm not saying that home prices are going to increase forever, but due to the rise of inventory from last year and looking at pre-COVID levels, and also we have seasonality effects as well, I expect to see home prices decrease for the remainder of the year. But again, not a sharp correction like we saw in 2022 due to the sharp rise of inventory and rates as well that we saw 2 years ago. The same dynamics are not at play right now. I'm not saying that everything's great, but there are a lot of challenges facing home buyers right now. But due to the fact that inventory is not increasing at the same rate as 2 years ago, is one of the reasons why I feel that we're not going to see a sharp correction in home prices this year. But of course, if you guys disagree with me, it's totally fine. Please leave a comment below. So to summarize, inventory is not only up by about 41% on a year-over-year basis, according to Altis Research.com, but it's also rising faster looking at pre-COVID levels, but not rising nearly as fast as 2022. Also looking at the same time frame this last week compared to the same time frame in 2019, we're down by about 27%. But that gap has actually been narrowing though, because about 1 month ago or so, that gap was around 40%. Now we're down to about 27%. Also a friendly reminder, there are some areas and also some states that have more inventory right now compared to 2019 though. But on a national level, at least, we're down by about 27%. All right, speaking of inventory levels, let's have a look at the number of new listings compared to 12 months ago. That has decreased by 2.2%. And also that marks the second consecutive month in which the number of new listings has decreased compared to the previous month. If you guys want to see housing market crash, my opinion, we want to see new listings absolutely surging. And of course, active listing inventory or housing supply also skyrocketing as well. But right now, we're not seeing a sharp rise of inventory levels due to new listings decreasing for the past 2 weeks. And on top of that, before that, for the most part, we saw single-digit gains in new listings. In other words, new listings have completely lost momentum ever since the beginning of May this year, rising mostly by single digits. Before that, we saw double-digit gains in new supply in the market. This appears to be why we're not seeing inventory surging. And of course, if you guys want to see home prices fall, more so than seasonality, watch inventory levels. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about how fast or how slow houses are selling right now. Because last week it took 5 days longer to sell a house compared to 12 months ago. Also, houses have been spending more time in the market compared to a year ago for the past 14 straight weeks. This is much different compared to October last year through March this year, when houses were selling faster compared to the year prior. Of course, as houses are taking longer to sell, this is all contributing to the rise of housing supply. All right, let's also talk about the increase of the number of price reductions on a national level. So these are people who listed their house for sale and they're reducing their asking prices in order to attract a home buyer and to get, of course, get their house sold. So the increase in the number of price reductions rose by 36.8% year over year. It has been higher compared to last year for the past 29 consecutive weeks as well. For comparison's sake, the number of price reductions increased by triple digits, an increase more than 100% from late 2022 until early 2023. Now we're up by only 36.8% last week. This is something we're also seeing as well, according to Altis, because the share of price drops is at 38.48% for the week ended August 9th. So this means that approximately 4 of every 10 houses for sale have reduced their asking prices. This, by the way, is at least a 5-year high, because higher than last year, a little bit higher compared to 2022, when at that time it was at 38.45%. Now it's at 38.48%. So more or less on par with 2022. Now, don't get me wrong here though, because you might look at that and go, oh, the share price drops right now is the same in 2022. And that was when we saw a decrease in home prices, right? But the difference between this year and last year is a very big one though, even though the share is approximately the same right now. So for example, at the trough this year, which is basically mid-February, the share price drops was at 30%. Now it has increased barely, up by about 8 percentage points to 38%. So 30 to about 38%. Now looking at the same time frame, more or less in 2022, the trough was in basically mid-March, when the share of price drops was just under 17%. And by the time we hit this time in 2022, it increased to 38%. So a giant increase in the share of price drops in 2022, which likely contributed to the the correction we saw that year. This year, even though we have the same share right now, the increase is barely noticeable compared to the giant increases we saw in 2022. Okay, if you guys are still watching today's video, I appreciate you so much. Please hit the like button. I also want to provide a summary of today's video and also kind of a summary regarding what happened this week in our housing market. So number one, asking prices have been relatively flat or down for the past 6 consecutive weeks and have been in negative territory for the past 3 consecutive weeks. This is from a significant rise in the number of houses for sale, as well as elevated home prices, which is causing sales to remain sluggish. Number two, housing inventory increased by 36% year over year last week, according to data from Realtorcom, but the growth rate has been stagnant for the past 3 consecutive weeks. So for example, the year-over-year gains of inventory levels have been paid at around 35 to about 38% for the past 3 months. In my opinion, this is from single-digit gains in the number of new supply hitting the market, and of course, more recently, year-over-year decreases in new listings. However, there's still approximately 27% fewer houses for sale right now compared to the same time frame in 2019. Also, real estate is regional, and of course, it's local as well. So for example, as of July, according to data from Realtor.com, in Texas, Idaho, and Florida, and Tennessee, they all have more existing houses for sale compared to July of 2019. Texas is up by 6%, Idaho also up by 6%, Florida saw a gain of 5%, and Tennessee is up by 2%. Also, Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona are not too far behind as well. They only have approximately 1 to about 5% fewer homes for sale compared to July of 2019. The significance regarding this is that areas that have more inventory compared to pre-pandemic levels are areas that are experiencing basically declines in home prices or stagnant home price growth. Number 3, approximately 70% of homeowners who do have a loan on their houses have a rate below 5%. That's based on data from Freddie Mac as of January this year. That has been limiting the amount of people listing their houses for sale and thus keeping housing inventory well below pre-COVID levels. Also, new listings have been rising by less than 10% ever since May, which has been basically limiting the growth rate of housing supply. I do not expect to see a surge in people listing their house for sale unless unemployment spikes. In other words, unless we get to a scenario in which we see forced selling, in which people are forced to sell their houses due to a financial hardship, which could be from being unemployed. Number 4, the share of price reductions is at least a 5-year high during the same time period, also rising faster than last year, but not rising nearly as fast as 2022. Also, price reductions tend to peak in the winter months, so I expect this to increase for the remainder of the year. Number 5, last week, houses on average took about 5 days longer to sell from 1 year ago. Also, homes have been sitting on the market longer from last year for the past 14 consecutive weeks. But wait, there's more. Number 1, in early August, 30-year fixed rates decreased to about a 1.5-year low, decreasing to around 6.3%. As of Thursday, that increased to about 6.6%, by the way. However, that is a big improvement from the 8% rates we saw back in October last year, though, right? Also, even with this decrease in rates, housing affordability is still a huge hurdle, in my opinion, likely due to the fact we have elevated home prices still in many markets across the United States. Number 2, the most recent stats we have from the MBA regarding mortgage purchase applications, these are people who are applying for a home loan to buy a house using a loan, that decreased by 8% year over year for the week ended August 9th. But that is an improvement though, because the previous report that was posted 1 week ago showed a decrease of 11%. Now it's only down by 8%. Also, according to the National Association of Realtors, or NAR, they reported that pending home sales of existing houses in June fell by 3% year over year and remains very close to all-time record lows. And their data, by the way, goes back to 2001. In addition, new home construction sales, which the U.S. Census Bureau defines as a contract signed between a home builder and home buyer, so it's acting really more like a pending home sale than a closed home sale, that actually decreased by 7% year over year in June to a 7-month low. So the resale market, it decreased by 3%, but new home construction, it fell by 7%. The big significance regarding this drop in new home construction is that this June, we have more new home construction for sale in the US that we've had going back to February of 2008. Despite that, sales decreased to a 7-month low this June. Number 3, looking forward for the nation as a whole, asking prices are down slightly, inventory has been increasing, and homes are sitting on the market longer, and we're seeing a rise in the number of price reductions. We're also moving towards a buyer's market, not in a buyer's market. Some markets, of course, have that, but on a national level, we're moving towards this buyer's market in which buyers could have an advantage over home sellers if inventory continues to increase. But of course, it could look a lot worse if inventory was absolutely skyrocketing on a national level. Plus, of course, every housing market's different. Inventory in California and the northeast part of the United States have far fewer homes for sale compared to 2019, whereas inventory is absolutely piling up in Texas, Idaho, Florida, and Tennessee. Number 4, the most important one. I appreciate you guys so much for watching today's video and of course for supporting my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Help us reach 100,000 subscribers. Maybe by the end of the month, we'll have to see. I think we're only about 40 away. So anyways, thank you so much for watching today's video. I appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video. Have an amazing day.